Jill Dempsey, and this is Metro Morning. Is ticking for a small town as it works to save its emergency department from a permanent closure. Coming up, we'll talk to one of the community members behind the petition to save the emergency room, which has garnered more than 20,000 signatures. That conversation coming up in just a few moments on Metro Morning. With amnesia sounds like a scene from a TV hospital drama, right? But coming up, we're going to meet an artist who lived through that and tells her story through art. That conversation coming up at 8:20 here on Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1. In the city right now, mostly cloudy and 10 degrees. We expect the sun to punch through that cloud. Expecting a high of 18 today. The wind's gusting up to 40 kilometers an hour this morning. Clear skies tonight, a low of 10. And tomorrow, sunshine and a high of 21. Nicole Martin's been here this morning. She's bringing us up to date on the regional news. Good morning.
Good morning, Jill. So the City of Toronto hosting its annual fireworks display tonight to mark Victoria Day. And this year, there is stepped-up security. This, of course, comes after a chaotic weekend last year. But aside from fireworks, there's also tons of things to get into in the city today, so we'll certainly take a closer look at that. Also, you mentioned our other top story, which is Minden, Ontario, the latest area to face the closure of an emergency department, and so residents are hoping the courts will side in their favor against this planned closure. Haliburton Highlands Health Services announced last month the ER at its Minden Hospital will close June 1st due to staffing shortages.
Yeah, so it's really become a race against time for this small Ontario town. The Haliburton Highlands Health Services, which operates the emergency department, says enormous pressure caused by staffing shortages led to that decision to close. It says the plan is to consolidate the region's emergency services at Haliburton Hospital. That's 25 minutes away from the Minden location. Richard Bradley is co-founder of the Save Minden Ontario Emergency Room Group. He has joined us this morning. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. As a CBC fan, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I really want to know how we got to this point that your emergency department in Minden is facing closure.
Well, actually, we're asking the same questions because given 6 weeks' notice and the variety of explanations that have been coming out of Carolyn Plummer, the president of HHHS, we're not real sure because one day it's a staffing shortage, the next day it's because we don't have inpatient beds, and another day there seems to be another story. So I guess the easiest way to explain even what we've been heard or what we've been told is, what she's told us requires a suspension of disbelief that we're just not able to achieve.
You have a petition that's now holding, I understand, more than 20,000 signatures. You held a rally yesterday where 1,000 people showed up to show their support. Why do you think this is an issue that is really resonating in this community?
Well, this having a hospital, having an emergency ward, because that's what it is. It's an emergency department. It is not a full-blown hospital. I mean, this is our basically our security. It's like having your caregiver when you're 5 years old, when you fall down and skin your knee, pick you up and brush you off and put a Band-Aid on you. It's a place that, let's face it, nobody wants to go, but everybody knows they can go. And everybody understands it. People have moved and made decisions about setting up businesses and living here because they know it's there. And 25 minutes down the road is on a bright sunny day. We actually still have this thing called winter, even though we're not in it right now. And that trip can be, depending on the day, a whole lot longer. And it's just not, we've had 2 hospitals for over a century. And while we have our continuing raising population that's doubled in the last 30 years and continues to grow in the summer, this is just not an option for us. And everybody gets it, even people in Haliburton get it.
You've had your own experience with the ER department in Minden. Can you share that with us?
Well, my wife had a stroke, and as one of our guests, Dr. Adil Shamji, we had 4 MPPs in yesterday, Chris Glover, Jennifer French, Adil Shamji, and Stephanie Bowman, but not our own, is I was in there, like I said, my wife had a stroke, and she got there in the golden hour that was explained to us in the first hour when that has occurred, and she had a very, good outcome from that. Myself, the most dangerous part, I went in with a case of cellulitis where I was taken quickly out and hammered with antibiotics, and they saved my leg. I would be, I could have lost my leg if I hadn't got in there in that time. And as we've explained, not every situation is indeed a life and death situation, but an infection can kill you if it's not treated. If you don't have a family doctor, that's what the health system says. If you don't have anywhere else to go and you think there's a real problem, you go to your emergency department because it's the safety net for everybody. And this is our safety net. And it was staffed and stable and had a bedrock of 30 years of dedicated doctors.
Halliburton Health sent an email to Metro Morning when we reached out, and it said it fought long and hard to keep both emergency departments open, but with no long-term solutions, severe and persistent staffing shortages, it's being forced to proceed with its decision to consolidate the departments. How do you respond to that email?
Well, that staffing shortage did not exist in Minden. It existed in Halliburton because there are 2 very different staffing models in the different buildings. One of them was set up by a dedicated group of ER docs almost 30 years ago that come in and do 24-hour shifts. And they were scheduled for the doctors right into the end of September with only 3 open shifts due to a semi-retirement. The other hospital is it's Health Force Ontario doctors, which are kind of like the new pilots of the airlines in that they're getting in their hours and getting in their experience because they don't have a hospital that they actually are assigned to. And that scheduling over there has been problematic. They almost had 22 closures, but they never had one. So the fact is, I guess, you think they'd want to consult with those doctors and nurses and everybody and the community and the county council and all the other ER services, which they didn't. They just denounced it.
Why do you think they didn't?
Because I think I believe they had made the decision, and they knew if they consulted with us that, between emergency services and the community and the politicians, that we would have actually solved the problem for them. And for some reason, they don't want it solved. And we don't understand it. We don't understand why our own MPP isn't even on our side, even though we have now, I believe, between 22 and 23,000 handwritten signatures. We will be doing an update count today. It's baffling to us. And as I've said before, I couldn't get a permit to build a fence in 6 weeks. And yet they gave us 6 weeks notice to close a hospital. Getting into court may be problematic, but we're going to get there. And they got injunction hearings in Toronto for a tree at Osgoode Call in a day, right? And as I've said before, do I need to go to the hospital and threaten to cut down a tree to get into court? I don't know.
How successful, Richard, do you think you're going to be, given that this closure is just 6 weeks away?
Well, it's not even 6. It's oh my gosh, this is the 22nd. It's like 9 or 10 days. They're going to be into court this week, as I understand it, because we met our obligations for our retainer with the lawyer, and the case is being developed. And as our lawyer said yesterday, he doesn't think we can keep it open forever based on a case, but he does believe that we can stop this closure now. And if that happens, what this community, and it's a little emotional, but we raised $1,000 an hour for this injunction.
Yeah.
And this is a small community, and the money's still coming in. It's still being counted. And we figure it'll be $100,000 to go to the end of this. And you know what? We will raise it. We will raise it, and we have set them on their ear. Our township is only 18,000 people. of full-time residents, and our petition is now 4,000 to 5,000 more because the people in Kawartha Lakes, the people from all the surrounding areas that come, are in the circle of care, and they know, they get it. And the other hospitals are overburdened. Lindsay is overburdened. This is going to mean all the surrounding hospitals will have increased ER loads, and we know, and it just disgusts us to hear the clinical way that Carolyn Plummer talks about monitoring the morbidity and mortality rates and making adjustments, basically saying in plain language, yes, we understand people may die, and we'll, see what we have to do if those rates increase. And that is just absolutely disgusting. As one of my best friends said yesterday, we are not statistics. We are people, we are parents, we are grandparents, there are children, and we are not statistics, and we will not be made statistics. The only statistic we want to be is the town that keeps its emerge open.
Well, we will continue to follow this story, Richard, and I do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure, and, Walt Disney couldn't just, sprinkle fairy dust on this and fix it for us, but we're fighting until the end.
Thank you, Richard.